So you got yourself a new job as a pipe fitter welder or are looking at getting into this field of work. You're qualified to weld pipe and are now expected to pull measurements, fit and weld your own pipe. You can weld it out no problem. However, you're a little bit hazy on the measurements and fitting portion of it all. Don't worry, we're going to do some learning today. Hey guys, my name is Edgar Cisneros. I'm a traveling pipe fitter welder for an industrial refrigeration company. The pipes that I fit and weld normally have ammonia running through them. This is what I do for a living these days. And today I'm going to show you a few different ways on how to find the takeoff for a 90-degree and 45-degree butt weld fittings. Then we're going to run over a basic scenario of how to pull measurements and fit a piece of prefab like this onto some mains. So let's get started. So let's talk about takeoffs. Hopefully you're familiar with this word by now, but if you're not, let me show you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the measurement from center line of the fitting to the face of it, what this distance is. Specifically, we're talking about long radius butt weld 90-degree fittings. Don't get them confused with short radius or socket weld 90-degree elbows, okay? Here's 3 quick ways to figure it out. Number 1, you measure it, and here's how to do it. So this one's pretty easy. All you have to do is grab your fitting, put it on a table or flat surface. You grab a 1-foot square, put it on the table, and where it touches the face of the fitting, that's your takeoff. For this, it's 6 inches still. And the second quick way to do it is the blue book. You get your blue book, which you can buy from Amazon. You open it up to page 95. You figure out what pipe size you're talking about. Let's look at 4-inch. Boom. You go all the way across and figure out what dimension you want. We're looking at the 90-degree long radius butt weld elbow. So you look for a dimension. So let's go again. Down to 4. You go all the way across, and it is 6. A dimension is 6 inches. A third way of doing this is using the half rule. You can use this method if you don't have the fitting in front of you to measure it, or you don't have the blue book readily available, all right? And this is how you do it. You take the nominal pipe size. We're gonna use a 4-inch pipe and a 4-inch elbow, okay? So you take the 4-inch pipe or the nominal pipe size, you divide it by 2, right? And your quotient, this number here, all you gotta do is add it back to the nominal pipe size. 6. 6 inches is the takeoff for a 4-inch butt weld long radius 90. You can use this half rule for pipe sizes between 3/4 inch and 24 inches. I have verified all the measurements and they're good to go. I've also stopped at 24 inches because these are the most common pipe sizes that we use at work. If you're gonna use something bigger than 24 inch, just go ahead and measure and re-verify for yourself. Now let's talk about a few ways of how to find the takeoff for 45-degree fitting. The first one is your blue book. Turn to page 95, go down the chart, find your pipe size, find your takeoff, all right? The second method is the 5/8 method. And how to use this method is you multiply 5/8 times the nominal pipe size. And for this example, I'm gonna use 4-inch pipe, okay? So we have a 4-inch pipe right here. You multiply it by 5/8, and your result is 2.5 inches. If you have your blue book in front of you, go ahead and double check my work. You'll find that the takeoff for a 4-inch 45-degree elbow is 2.5 inches, okay? Now this method is only good for pipe sizes from 4-inch to 24, exclude 22-inch pipe. A third way is the division method. You take your nominal pipe size and you divide it in half 3 times, and this is how it works. So we're gonna use 6-inch pipe for this example, all right? So 6-inch pipe in half is 3 inches, in half is 1.5 inches. Cut that in half, it's 3/4 of an inch, okay? You take your second number and your fourth number, you add them together, and you get 3 3/4. For those of you that have their blue book in front of you, go ahead and double check my work. You will find out that it is 3 3/4 the takeoff for a 6-inch 45-degree elbow. Now this rule, again, it doesn't apply to all sorts of pipes. It only goes for pipes between 4-inch to 24, excluding 22-inch pipe. Eventually, you'll know some of these measurements by heart. So let's take what we learned and go fit some pipe. All right, so here's a quick and pretty common scenario. You got some mains going this way. You got some other mains on pipe stands going this way. And your job is to connect them using this piece of prefab. Okay? So this piece is most likely welded out in a shop environment. It's welded on a vise, it's rolled out. It's pretty quick. But you get hooked up with actually installing this piece. And we're gonna find out where to cut it, where it lands on this main, and where to cut this smaller pipe to mate it up with the space of the 90. Before you pull measurements or lay anything out, let's just verify that our pipe is in the correct spot. If this scenario here looks pretty identical to something that you're doing or about to do, then most likely this pipe here is set in a certain location. Somebody hooked us up and wrote the ID and location of this pipe. There we go. So we're good to go. Let's go ahead and lay out where we're going to cut this top pipe. In order for you to do that, we need to go ahead and identify the top of this pipe. So you have your centering head here, right? All you got to do is spin it around the top of the pipe, make sure it's level, and go ahead and punch it. All right, one punch mark. And since it's pretty small, all I'm doing is just making a little circle around it to identify it. And then I want to make a second mark here. And the reason I do this is I want to identify the top of the pipe for, you know, a good 6-inch span here, so we have a little bit of wiggle room. And then all I do is connect the top. For those of you that do not have a centering head, you can use, I know everyone has a level, and I know most of you guys have a 1-foot square. Okay, all you got to do is put your level on a square, set it on here, you make sure it's level, right, and then you mark it. After you've marked the top of this pipe here, you're going to go ahead and transfer this mark to this pipe here, which is going to identify center of this main. All right, there's a couple ways on how to do this. The easiest way is with a laser. All right, this laser here is a Bosch laser. It's a 3-dot laser. It shoots a dot up, it shoots a dot down, and it shoots straight ahead. Okay, so what we're going to do is, all you have to do with this type of laser, if you're going to use this tool here, is, this is why we made a longer reference line on the top of the pipe. There we go. So you can move the laser left or right. So you can see right here, we got our laser mark right here. So let's go ahead and mark it. Another tool to use to get this mark up here is a plumb bob. Throw the plumb bob on there. All you gotta do, make sure that it lands on this mark right here, and then make your mark, all right? But if you are hooked up and these pipes are about this distance, then you can go ahead and use a 2-foot square, right? Look, it fits perfectly. All you gotta do is put the heel on your mark, grab your level, put that baby on here, make sure it's level, and go ahead and mark it, all right? Another great tool is a 4-foot square, all right? Here you guys a bunch of examples of tools that you can use, because sometimes you don't have all of them present, okay? And then, you know, get this sucker level, and then make your mark, all right? So those are a couple ways to get your mark up there. If you don't have a laser, invest in one. It's gonna be your best friend. So I've made this mark a little bit bigger and with paint pen so you can see it in the camera. But this mark here, it identifies center line of the pipe that's right below it. All right, so let's go ahead and identify. We're gonna put C, the little dot right there. That means the center of the pipe on the bottom. That's not what we want. What we're looking for is where to cut this pipe, where you're gonna weld the face of this 90 here to it. All right, let's go back to our takeoffs for our 90s here. All right, it's 6 inches. All right, so the takeoff, where you need to go ahead and move this mark here, is 6 inches. I went ahead already and marked it out, but I'm gonna make it bigger with the paint pen so we all know. Boom. So I'm just gonna write cut here. so no one forgets. Throw your wraparound around it, make your mark, and that's where you will cut it. Next, we're going to drop the center line of this pipe onto this main, which is going to identify the location of the riser and hole for your prefab. Let me show you a few ways with the tools that I have out right now, okay? One of them, if the scenario is this close here, you can get away with using a 2-foot square. You put the 2-foot square on the side of the pipe, and yes, I said we're getting center line, but this is just getting you ready, okay? It's prepping you there. Hopefully you guys can see this here. All right, so I made a mark, it's about right here. All right, so that's the edge of the pipe, and we know this is 4-inch pipe, so if you don't know, go ahead and measure it. 4-inch pipe, the OD is approximately 4.5 inches. So all you have to do is make your mark from this edge here, center line is half of the pipe, which is 2 1/4. Another way to do it, plumb bob. This doesn't require batteries or a bubble that can be potentially broken. You throw it on the top, you mark it, it identifies the side of the pipe, all right? And then again, you go half the pipe dimension, that's center line, all right? If a 2-foot square is too short, you can bust out a 4-foot level, all right? Same thing, put it against the pipe, make sure it's level, mark it, shoot over half the pipe dimension. And the last way I'm gonna show you is using a centering head and the laser. This is my preferred method, so here's how it goes. Put your centering head on the bottom, near the center line mark that you had already transferred up, get it level, punch it, mark it, then you get your laser here, all right? You put the bottom dot on that reference line, and then you slide it all the way until you are center with it. Since we already have a mark there, check it out. Oh, there we go. We're getting somewhere now, right? We know where to cut this pipe here. We know the location of the bottom of this prefab, where this riser and hole is gonna go. Now we need to determine what is the length, how we get the length of this prefab. So from center line here to the top of here, I'm gonna use my preferred method, the centering head, and your BFH, put it on the side, level it out, pop it, and mark it. Now we're ready to pull some measurements. I have approximately 21 3/4, okay? So that's to the top of this pipe. The measurement that we just pulled, 21 3/4, was center of the 90 to the top of that main over there, right? But we don't stop there, okay? Since we are gonna saddle it, that means that that measurement here is actually from center of this 90 to the throat of the fish mouth, which is right here, okay? So what I like to do is I still like to identify this measurement here, all right? And then we'll figure out what the distance is between the throat to the edge of the ear. Let's go ahead and lay out 21 3/4. This is a 4-inch elbow, so I'm gonna write takeoff as a reminder for all of us. It is 6 inches, 6 inches for this one. And how I like to do it is I got my tape measure, put it on that face, it's at 6 inches, pull back at 21 3/4. There we go, 21 3/4, bam. This mark is the throat. Now we're trying to figure out how much more pipe we need to make the ear portion of the saddle. And here's a couple ways on how to do that. You can get your blue book, turn to page 28, and figure out what you're working with. We got a 4-inch riser, and for this example, I only had 6-inch pipe, so that main down there is 6-inch. So you need a maximum of 11/16 more pipe from the throat. Okay, that's one way to do it. Here's another way. You can get this app for your phone. It's called Pipefitter's Tools. This is an Android, but they have it for Apple as well. All right, you go down to pipe offset calculator. You go to fish mouth. You input all your data, the header data, the OD, the riser OD, and then the wall thickness. After you choose how many ordnance you want to lay it out, you hit it. And we are left with, the biggest number is 11/16, and then the number one number there is 5/16. Let's just verify that on our blue book here.
4-inch riser, 6. You're left with 5/16 and 11/16. Oh boy, sure's pretty close. Another way, or a pretty rough way, to figure out how long to make the ears of the saddle or the fish mouth from the throat to the edge of the ear is you could get a small piece of a scrap or the same prefab if it's small enough. Throw it up here, make sure it's level, and all you're going to do is measure how far down it goes to touch the pipe to the bottom of here, bottom of the face right there. Again, it's just a pretty rough way to do it. You're going to be doing a whole lot of trimming like this. The biggest portion of this ear is 11/16, all right? But we also have to figure out where and how to make it, because we have a 90-degree elbow here, right? So we know that the main goes here. So what I like to do is leave me a little reference mark so I don't mess this up, okay? So I know that the pipe, the throat of it goes right here. The way I do this is I put a wraparound line for both marks here. One represents the throat, and one represents the far side of the ear of the saddle. Then we're going to mark top, bottom, side, and side on this. But first we need to rotate the elbow so it is level, all right? So you put this on here, make sure this is level, and this pipe here is level. I'm going to use a centering head to mark and identify the top, sides, and you can even use it for identifying the 45-degree mark, okay? Once you've punched them, bam, 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 all the way around, you can go ahead and use your wraparound to connect the dots. So on this quarter of the pipe, I connected all 3 dots using a wraparound. The rest of the pipe, I only did from top to side and use a wraparound to connect the dots. I'm going to cut this off using a cutting disc and trim it using a grinding wheel, because I'm actually out of acetylene here in the garage, but also let you know that you can do it this way without acetylene, just in case it's not available out in the field or wherever you're at.
Now we need to address making the hole for the actual stabbing. I haven't done it, and I figured I'm not going to do it because there's so many ways to get it done, and your employer may have a specific way they want you to do it, and you may be using a variety of pipe sizes to do your stabbings. It could be an 1.5-inch pipe, 6-inch pipe, or bigger, right? So I'm gonna give you a couple of tips. If your employer requires you to use a hole saw for smaller diameter pipe, after you do your hole saw, grab a magnet and pick up all your burrs and that slug in case it didn't come out in the hole saw. Or if you're going to use a torch, oxyacetylene torch, or maybe even a plasma cutter, you can use your drop for your fish mouth, put it on here, center it, and then grab your marker and mark the inside of it. This will get you a rough idea of where your hole goes. Or you can use the blue book and lay it out. That right there is a whole class on its own. So we already made our hole. Now it's time to fit this pipe up. And here's our prefab. It's been cut to length and has a fish mouth on it. Before we go any further, I do want to tell you guys that I did not mention 2 things while building this piece. One of them is the root opening, your welding gap, or your bevel. Now this is important because if you're working with a certain WPS, it may require a certain gap. So when you're building this, just keep that in mind. Whatever your measurements were, if you're required to have an 1/8 gap, then add that or subtract that to your measurements. The second one was a bevel. I started beveling this, but I said, hey, for this demonstration, all I'm going to do is trim it down so it's a nice snug fit when I sit it on top of here. This pipe was cut at the mark that you left on here, and it's beveled. Now let's throw this baby up here. All right, let me show you a trick with a piece of angle here and your chain grips. You don't need a big fancy clamping fitting tool mechanism, all right? All you gotta do is put it up there and it'll hold it in place on that angle. Throw your chain grip around. Boom. All you want to do is get it as close to the joint as possible Obviously giving yourself some room so you can put your tacks on there. Put it on top, clamp it down, and now your high-low, if you did have any, should be 0. With this angle up here held down by the chain grips on this pipe, it's holding the fitting center on the pipe there, and it's actually holding it pretty snug here. So all I gotta do is make sure that this face of the 90, it's flush with this face. So if you have to bump it around, make sure that this gap, if you have any gap, is the same as this gap. So just bump it around, you'll be good to go. It's about smaller than an 1/8 gap all the way around. Here we go. It's fit up nice, centered on the pipe, and level this way. Let's check the other way. And it's level that way. We're good to tack it. I know this scenario is very specific, having mains here, and fake mini pipe stands over here, but hopefully it got you thinking of where to start pulling measurements, or how to start pulling measurements on your next fitment, or how to use a tool for more than one of its uses, all right? And if you're a new guy that got thrown into a position like this, where, surprise, you're fitting your own pipe, then hang in there, soak everything up, be hungry for this knowledge. Because if I can go from doing 8 years as an infantryman in the Marine Corps to doing this for a living, buddy, I know you guys can. I'll see you guys on the next one.